right, well, good stuff. How's everybody doing this morning? Awesome. If fall or winter is here, I'm not sure which one it is, but it's all good. How many Michigan fans do we have in the place today? All right, you get to gloat. It's like the first time in a while, so have at it. Michigan State fans, we're sorry, but we're glad you're here as well. All right, good stuff. Well, again, my name is Jason, lead pastor here of the church. Just so honored that you'd be joining us today. If you're just checking us out, if you're just kind of seeing what this is all about, you're at a great time because we're in the middle of a series called Legacy. And what we believe is that legacy is something that you're known for, something that you can pass down onto somebody else. I think a lot of times in our world today, we talk about legacies. A lot of times when it comes to athletes and sports and what is an athlete's legacy, who's the greatest player of all time, who's the greatest team of all time. And I just believe that a legacy is more than just accomplishments or personal, things that somebody does. A legacy is actually something that you are known for, but something that you can hand off to another individual. It's somebody that you can say, hey, here's what I was doing. This is where I'm at in my life. I want to hand it off to you, and I want you to do even greater things than I ever did. And a legacy is not just something that all about you, but it can be something that you pass on. And what we're talking about in this series is the legacy that we are building together here at our church. Like at City Light Church, what will City Light Church be known for? What is going to be our legacy? What are some things that when people walk into this room in 2 years, 5 years, or wherever we're at, if we're in a building one day, come on, like what are people going to say about us? What are people going to think about our church? What are they going to write about us? And I just believe with all my heart that it's important to know who we are, that we can pass it on to the next generation. And so this whole series has been talking about legacy and what I've been calling our legacy statements. We have a couple statements that we have here at our church that we don't just have them like written down somewhere and hide them away. We want this to be who we are. We want this to be in the fabric of who we are. Like you're like, I don't know what's different about that place, but there's just something different I enjoy. And that's just our culture. It's what we want to be known for. And in week one, we talked about, if you were with us, that we are a life-giving church, that our approach to God may be different than how some of you grew up in. I don't know about you, but I grew up in a church that it didn't look like the people were glad I came that Sunday. And if I sat in somebody's seat, they let me know about it. And it was really kind of like a harsh church at times. And we wanted to create a church that was very life-giving. And it stems from our approach to God. We view God not in just a rules, regulation, God's mad at me. But we view God in a sense of that he is a loving father who is in love with his kids, that we're all God's kids, just some of us don't know it yet. And that he is madly in love with us. And when you take that approach to God, that he is a loving father, it makes a world of difference. It's so life-giving in your relationship with God. It's not about religion. It's about a relationship with a God who is madly in love with you. And then last week we had a guest speaker, Don Wiper was with us, and he talked about that one of our culture statements, one of our legacy statements is that we're always going to be a church that reaches people who are far from God. We never want to be a church that just gets in a holy huddle and hangs out all together and says, oh my gosh, the big bad world is out there. Let's just hide here in a high school and not ever reach out to our neighbor, not ever reach out to our coworker, just kind of hide somewhere. We want to be a church that is a blessing to our community. We want to be a church that is reaching out to other people. We want to be a place where you can invite your family and friends, and when they come here, it's not weird. It's not like, I love my church, but it might be a little weird today. Just buckle up. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, we want a great church for you to come in, but we're always going to be a church that's reaching people. We're always going to be thinking about people that are in our neighborhoods right now that maybe would never go to church, but one day will be here with us. And so we're always going to be a church that's reaching people who are far from God. And today, I want to talk about another legacy statement with you. And I believe with all my heart that this is a statement that could radically change your life if you embrace it and you actually involve it in your life, you apply it into your life. And that is this legacy statement that we are contributors, not consumers. That we're gonna be a church that is contributors, not consumers. And that statement, like I said, when I unpack it today, I believe has so much potential to radically change your life for the better, but you gotta embrace it, you gotta apply it. Back in the 1970s, three guys, actually I think it was 1976 to be specific, three guys ventured out to start a company. And these two of the guys owned about 45% of this company, and they brought in this other older gentleman and they gave him 10% of the company because they said, you know what, we really know what we're doing, but we kind of fight all the time. We don't like each other, and we need somebody who's a little older who can come in, kind of be like a big brother to us, help us in a lot of our stuff. So they gave him 10% of the company, and he kind of wrote all the contracts, and he kind of was there mediating all the disputes between these two guys who had majority share of the company. And what they did is they said, we need to take out $15,000 to start our company. Wouldn't it be great to only have to take out $15,000 to start a company today? They took out in 1976, 15 grand to start their company. And about 12 days after the company launched, this older gentleman who had 10% share of the company, he started to think. And he was like, you know what if this company like goes belly up? Like, what if we don't make it? And the bank, I've got a house, I've got a car. The bank's not gonna go after these two jokers who don't really have anything. They're gonna come after me. And so he decided about 12 days after this company launched to sell his 10% share for $800 back to these two guys. So he sold a 10% share of Apple back to Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs in the early 70s for $800. I looked up what that would be worth today. 10% share of Apple today would be worth $67 billion today. Talk about, you don't need the mega millions. Just get 10% share of Apple. That's it. And it's interesting because they interviewed him and they're like, well, what do you think? You don't want to be known for that. Like, you don't want to be known for the guy who sold 10% share of Apple for $800. And so like, they said, they talked to him, like, well, do you have any regrets about it? And he's like, no, I have no regrets. It's okay. And I'm like, dude, stop lying. Like, you are regretting this. Like, you got 67 billion regrets right now. Don't lie. Like, that's the deal. And when I was thinking about that story, I thought about this message and this legacy statement that I don't want you to come here every single week or whenever you come to church here, and I don't want you to sell yourself short of all that is available to you and all that God wants to do in your life on account of what he has done in this world to this point. Like, I don't want you to sell yourself short and say, you know what, I think this is what I'm getting. I think this is a good deal, but really I think there's so much more available for us if we really truly grasp this idea that we are called to be contributors, not consumers. And so I'm gonna unpack this for you today and kind of break it down because I believe it has the potential to transform your life, your family, people around you. It has such an amazing potential in it. Because maybe there's some of you here today who you would say, man, you're struggling in some area of your life. Maybe there's some of you here today that maybe you would say, you know what, financially I am struggling big time. Maybe my marriage is struggling big time. Maybe my emotions, like I'm so stressed out. I've got anxiety like crazy. Like I just feel like my emotions are a wreck. I feel like there's things going on. I'm just struggling in my life. There's areas that I just feel like aren't where I want them to be. And I think that a lot of times we struggle at times and we have this thought but we think, but I go to church. Like, I've got all these struggles in my life. I believe in God and I go to church, and why am I still struggling with these things? Why haven't I moved beyond these things yet? Why am I still, I feel like I'm not further down the road than I want to be? Why in the world am I still struggling with some of these things in my life? And so I want to help unpack that again. I want to say a statement that you probably didn't expect to hear when you came to church today. And the statement is this, that if you're here and you believe in God and maybe you come to church and you're part of this thing, but you're still struggling in different areas of your life, maybe it's time for you to stop going to church. Maybe it's time for you to stop going to church and instead do something different. Because I believe with all my heart that God's highest calling for you and for me as a Jesus follower, if you're a Jesus follower in this place, isn't to go to church. It's not to go to a destination, but it's to be the church and to let God transform you from the inside out. Our highest calling is not to go to church, but to be planted in the house of God. There's a difference here that we're going to unpack today. And so there's this idea that it's not about going to church, it's about being planted in the Word of God. Where does this language come from? It comes from the book of Psalms. If you have an old school Bible, you can open up like right in the middle, and that is the book of Psalms. It's a magic trick that you can show all your friends. But the book of Psalms, chapter 92, says this. It says, the righteous will flourish like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar of Lebanon. Let's talk about that phrase for a second. It says that they're going to flourish like these two trees, like a palm tree and like a cedar tree. Now, flourish just isn't a word that we use a lot probably in today's language. At least I don't. People that say, hey, pastor, how are you doing? I don't turn around and say, I'm just flourishing. Like, oh my goodness, like flourishing. It's just amazing, flourishing everywhere I go, like flourish. Like we just don't use that word. Maybe you do, and that's cool for you, but like I don't know, we don't use that word a lot in our vernacular today, our vocabulary. We don't do that. But what does flourish mean? Well, flourish means to thrive, to prosper, to be blessed, to be a blessing, and having spiritual growth in your life. It's like I'm growing, I'm thriving, I'm flourishing in my life. And he says that he compares it to these two trees, this cedar tree and a palm tree. And the cedar trees always were known for their durability and their beauty and their ability to resist decay and rot. Like they were a strong tree, they smell good too. And then at the same time, he says this palm tree, he compares it to a palm tree. And a palm tree in the Bible is always significant as a symbol of being triumphant and victorious. Like they waved palm branches when Jesus came into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. It wasn't Palm Sunday back then, but it was a sign of triumphant, like victorious. And so the scriptures are saying, listen, when you're planted in the house of God, you're gonna flourish. You're gonna be durable. You're gonna be strong. You're gonna be beautiful. You're gonna be able to resist decay and rot. You're gonna be able to be victorious in your life, triumphant. These are some attributes the Bible talks about that you're gonna be a blessing. You're gonna be prosperous. You're gonna flourish when you're planted in the house of the Lord. You know, how are you doing, man? I'm flourishing. I'm blessed. Things are going good. Like life's not perfect, but I'm feeling great. Things are going good. Back to Psalms 92, he says, the righteous will flourish like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar of Lebanon. Planted in the house of the Lord, they will flourish in the courts of God. Scripture does not say that if you go to church, you will flourish. It says if you are planted in the house of the Lord, you will flourish. Verse 14, it says, they will still bear fruit in their old age. Come on, somebody. I'm still gonna bear fruit in my old age. That's a good thing. They will stay fresh and green, proclaiming the Lord is upright. He is my rock. Those who are planted in the house of the Lord are gonna flourish. They're gonna thrive. They're gonna be a blessing. They're gonna be pleasing to be around. They're gonna be strong. They're gonna be durable. They're gonna be people that are triumphant and victorious. Now, unfortunately, I would guess that if we sat down and had a coffee and talked, you probably wouldn't describe, a lot of you probably would not describe your life like this. You would not describe your life as victorious, prospering, strong, faithful. Like you may not describe your life as flourishing. Unfortunately, you may say something like, instead of being spiritually flourishing, you might say I'm spiritually dry today. I'm just spiritually dry. Instead of maybe saying I'm thriving emotionally, you might say I'm emotionally withering. Like I just am. I just don't know how to deal with that. Instead of maybe saying I'm connected relationally, you might say I'm relationally empty. Like I got 5,000 friends on Facebook, but nobody really to talk to. I'm just relationally empty. You might say, instead of saying I'm prospering financially, you might say I'm financially stressed. I live paycheck to paycheck. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know how to pay that bill. If another bill showed up unexpectedly, I don't know what we would do. You may say that. Instead of being spiritually fulfilled, you might say, you know what, I'm still reaching, I'm searching, I'm still trying to find something in this life that is going to fulfill me. I don't know what it is, and I'm reaching, I don't know what to do. I'm still searching for significance in my life. And a lot of us may say that today. And I go to church, I'm a part of a church, I go to that church at that high school, but I just don't feel like I'm flourishing. I'm not all that God has called me to be. But listen, those who are planted in the house of the Lord will flourish. That is a promise from God. That's a promise from God. So I think what we need to realize this morning and every day of our life is that our life is a seed. That your life is a seed. It's a seed. And what does that mean? Is that like a seed has tremendous potential. It has tremendous potential. If a seed, it has potential to grow. It has potential to multiply. It has a potential to be a blessing. It has a potential to do lots of other things. But at the same time, a seed that's unplanted has a potential to lie dormant. It has a potential to be unproductive, unfruitful as well, and dissatisfied. So our life is a seed. So if you're taking notes today, let me give you 2 principles of planting and of seeds this morning. Number 1, a seed can only grow if it's planted. If my life is a seed, my life can only grow if it is planted. There's a very powerful story that Jesus talks about in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 13. He talks about this farmer who goes out to sow some seed, to plant some seed, and he's very generous with his seed. He's throwing seed everywhere. And some of the seed falls on this path, this hard ground, but because there's no place for the seed to grow, the birds come in and literally steal the seed. They eat the seed because it can't grow. Like that seed never reaches its full potential. Another time he's throwing seed other places where there's a little bit of soil, a shallow soil, and the seed grows for a little while. But then when the sun comes out and it scorches this little emerging plant, it dies and it withers because the roots could not grow deep. And then there's this other part where Jesus says that the farmers throw seed on this other place and it starts to grow, but all of a sudden the other plants and other weeds begin to grow with it that have thorns, and they're choking out this other plant that is there to produce life and there to produce fruit. It's like all of a sudden these other plants just choke it out. And Jesus even says that this is the cares and the worries of this world and our life, that it chokes out the potential that we have. And so sometimes what happens a lot of times is that we start to fade away. Maybe we come to church, we're a part of the things of God, and then we start to fade away. Life gets maybe difficult. So we start to thrive spiritually, but we never get our roots planted deep in the things of God. And so, when life's troubles come, we kind of fall away again, and we kind of struggle with some issues in our life. And when things aren't going the way that we want them to be, we kind of worries of bills and finances and emotions and relationships. When those worries start to hit us, we abandon our faith because it's like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do. And I back away again because I'm not planted. I'm letting the worries of this world choke me out. But Jesus says that there's also a time when the seed falls on good soil. And it multiplies. It produces 30, 60, 100 times more than itself. And that this one little seed can make a huge difference in all the things around it if it plants itself in good soil. So who flourishes? The scripture's very clear. Those who plant themselves in the house of the Lord. Those who get dug deep. They join a small group. They join what's going on in the church. They're not just going to church, but they're a part of the church. They realize that, listen, the church is more than a building, that I am the church, and that God is doing a work inside of me. I'm a part of something that's greater. Listen, a seed can only grow if it's planted. A seed can only grow if it's planted. But number 2, if you're taking notes, going to church isn't the same as being planted. Going to church isn't the same as being planted. I was talking to a friend of mine just last week, and he was telling me about some struggles in his life and some things that were going on. And I said, man, well, what church are you going to right now? And he said, well, honestly, he goes, we go to this church, but I don't like it my wife and I, we really don't like it. It's like, my kids love it because of the youth program, and they're constantly pulling us to go to church. They're constantly saying, hey, we're going to church today. Hey, we got to get to church. We got to get to church. And we're always like, oh my goodness, we don't really want to go. But if it wasn't for our kids, like, we wouldn't go anywhere. And I realized as he's talking, I'm like, wow, you may go to church, but you're not planted in the house of the Lord. It's different. There's a difference between going to church and being planted in the house of God. Even in the New Testament, the Greek word for church is the word ekklesia. Ekklesia, and it has a great meaning, but it has two different meanings. One, it has this meaning that we're called to gather together. The church is called to gather together with each other, to assemble together. So it's great to listen to a preacher on a podcast. I do that all the time. I think that's a great thing to do. But it's not the same of being planted in the house of the Lord. It's not the same. Just like I would not want my only relationship with my kids to be a voicemail that I leave them on their phone one day, and that's the only way we connect. That's the only way we have relationship. I want my kids in my house. I want my kids sitting down at the table. I want to hear how their day went. I want to talk to them about some things because I'm their dad, and I want to gather the Rollin family together and hang out and talk. Like, I think that's so important that we got to understand that we're called to gather together. So we gather to hear God's word. We gather to be unified. We gather to encourage each other. We gather to contribute our gifts and our talents and the things that God has given us. We help each other out. But at the same time, the word ekklesia means the called ones to be sent out. That our understanding of church is that we are the church. Like, I'm the church, you're the church. Church is not a building. Church is not a destination that we go to, that we are the church, and that we go out and the church exists for the world. Like, our job and understanding is that, listen, we're the church, but we are not here just to gather. It's part of it, but we are here to be sent out so that we can make a difference in your workplaces, in your neighborhoods, having the identity that it's something I embrace. Like, I'm the church. I'm called to go into my neighborhood. I'm called to reach people in my office space. I'm called to talk to people in my family. Like, I'm the church. Like, that's who God has called me to be, the church. And I don't exist just to be in a building one day. I exist so that we can be a blessing, to go into this world and make a difference. I'm here to be a contributor, not a consumer. So what happens when you're planted? When you begin to say, okay, I'm gonna get planted in. I'm gonna not just go to church, but I'm gonna get planted in. I'm gonna get rooted in to what they're doing there at that place. I'm gonna be a part of everything. I'm gonna embrace the fabric. I'm gonna go out of this place and be the hands and feet of Jesus. What does that look like? When you become the church and you realize this, number one, if you're taking notes, your roots will grow deep. Your roots will grow deep when you are planted in the church. The book of Jeremiah in the Old Testament says this: they are like trees planted along a riverbank with roots that reach deep into the water. Such trees are not bothered by the heat or worried by long months of drought. I wonder how many of us in this place today have got some spiritual heat going on in our life right now. Like, there's some spiritual things, we got some heat happening, or maybe you'd say, I just feel like I'm in a spiritual drought today. I feel like I'm just going through the motions. I feel like I'm not really connected in. I feel like I'm just attending church. I believe in God, but I'm still struggling. I got so much heat. I got so much drought in my life. And here's the deal. When you are planted in the house of God, your roots grow deep and you are connected to a different source that is stronger and greater than any source and problem on the surface. Like, that's what the local church is all about. This past week, I was watching some of the images and pictures from the devastation that happened from Hurricane Michael and that rocked the Florida Panhandle. And as I was watching these images come across the screen, this one story popped up that made such an impact in me. They were showing this story about all the devastation. All the homes on the Mexico beach were destroyed, except for this one house made it through it all. And I got a picture of it today that I'm gonna throw on the screen that you can see. This one house made it through it all. Like, there's devastation everywhere. But that one house took the brunt of the storm, took everything, the full brunt of that hurricane, took it, and it stood with very little damage, very, very little damage. And they interviewed the owners of the home, and they said, how in the world did your house make it? Like all these other homes are devastated. They have to rebuild their entire lives now. And how in the world did your home make it? And the owners of the house, they said this. They said at every point, from the pilings to the roof and everything in between, when it came time to make a decision about what level of material or what to use, we didn't pay any attention to the building code, meaning the state of Florida has a standard that your house has to meet certain requirements to be on the beach right there in Florida. It's got to be a certain hurricane proof. And he said, we didn't pay attention to their standards. I love this. He goes, we went above and beyond the code. We asked the question, what would survive the big one? And we constantly tried to build it for that. He goes on to say that they dug pilings that were the standard was 30 feet, but they went even deeper in 40 feet. And they connected from all the way down 40 feet below the surface, all the way to the roof, like the concrete and rebar and all these things that were tied down deep in the foundation of this house. And because how they built their house, it was able to stand the greatest storm that has hit the Florida Panhandle and that they can remember. And I was thinking about this, the standard of our life when it comes to church and it comes to faith, it's like, well, we go to church. We go to church, we're part of that church, yeah. But listen, that standard's not gonna save your house. The standard is not gonna save your marriage. The standard is not gonna save your finances. It's not gonna save your kids if they're being rebellious. The standard is not gonna save the way you want it to be saved. Listen, we go above and beyond the standard. We're contributors, not consumers. We say, okay, God, here's what your word says. We believe it fully and wholly. We're going all in, 2 feet off the diving board. We believe that you have life in your word, and we are gonna be planted in the house of God. We are not just gonna show up once in a while, man. We wanna be planted in because I don't wanna live my life by the standard. I wanna go above the standard so that when the storms of life come, listen, my house, my family, my life is ready for whatever this world throws at me because I've built my roots grow deep, my foundation goes deep, and that's the power of the local church. Listen, that's the power of the local church. We need each other. We need our gifts, our talents, our resources. We need to be able to help each other. And so that's the power of the local church. But number two, last thing, if you're taking notes, when you're planted in the house of God, your roots grow deep, but then also your roots produce fruit. They produce fruit. Jeremiah 17:8 says, their leaves stay green and they never stop producing fruit. What is fruit? Well, the Apostle Paul, who actually hated the church at one time until he had an encounter with Jesus and he wrote about his whole story in the New Testament. He said, listen, when you're producing fruit in your life, it's like it's different. The same principle applies like a tree, but it's love is the fruit. It's joy, it's peace, it's patience, it's kindness, it's gentleness, it's faithfulness, it's self-control. But here's the deal that I think we forget sometimes is that the fruit is never intended for the tree that bears it. The fruit is always intended for those who wander beneath its branches. When you say, man, I'm producing fruit in my life. And I got love. My love is contagious. Like love can go into a room, into an office and make a difference in the lives of people who are hurting. My joy can be contagious. When I walk in, I'm just excited. And yes, I got bad times too. I'm not putting on a happy face and faking it. But listen, my joy, my optimism, my belief in God can be contagious. Why are you okay? You're getting let go today. Why are you happy? Well, I just believe God has something better for me. Like having joy in the midst of any storm, any trial can make a difference in people's lives. When we have self-control and the world's going crazy, but yet we stay true to what God's word says, that makes a difference in people's lives. And our fruit is not for ourselves. It's to be a blessing to other people. And that's what I love about our church. We're not consumers, man. We're contributors. We're bringing this thing together. because we understand that we have fruit that is available for other people, that we can make a difference in people's lives. So what do we do? How do we go from here? Well, obviously from the first day we started this church, we've always talked about that growth track thing. We've always talked about that growth track thing, and if you've been here once or you've been here twice, you've heard it. You've heard it a lot. And if you've been here for a couple years, you've heard it every Sunday. And we've played the same announcement for the last almost 4 years, growth track. Because listen, the growth track is so important because we want you to hear our story, but then we want to hear your story as well. We want to hear your spiritual journey. We want to hear what God's doing in your life. We want to help you learn what it looks like to be planted in the house of the Lord. We want you to identify and discover gifts and talents the way God created you and made you, so that you don't just hoard them for yourself, but that it can be a blessing to so many people around you. And you may think, well, I don't have any gifts. We'll show you that you do, and we'll show you how they can be a blessing and how you can use them to be planted in the house of God. And then you start joining a small group. We have small groups that are happening all over the community right now. You start to develop relationships where you're not just coming here on Sunday, sitting in your seat and saying, I hope nobody notices me. I gotta leave. I gotta get out of here. Like I wanna get out. I know Pastor's gonna be by that door, so I'm gonna go out that door so I don't have to shake his hand. But listen, we wanna develop relationships with you because listen, we need each other. If you think you can make it through this life on your own and all of the spiritual opposition that is out there, let me tell you, just say it from the bottom of my heart, man, you are sorely mistaken. This world is too hard to do it on your own. There's too many struggles that we face. Our marriages can't make it on our own. Our finances can't make it on our own. I don't know how to be a good parent without people around me helping me. There's so many reasons why it's important to be planted in the house of the Lord. And when you do, you'll see the difference. So here's the deal. I believe in this principle so much. I'm going to say something again today that you may not think you would have heard when you came to church today. And that is this, that if you would say, Pastor, I like you, you're funny, I like your coat and your shoes, but I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if I can get planted here at City Light. It's kind of a far drive. I don't know if I really can get planted here. If that's you and you say, you know what, I just don't feel like I can get planted here, then let me help you find another church where you can get planted in. I know a lot of great pastors, maybe in your city that you're living in, maybe around here, great churches in our community that love God, are reaching people, are doing some great things. Listen, if you say, man, I just can't get planted in at City Light, come talk to me. I'll be over there in the lobby before you leave. Email me through our church website, citylightchurch.com, and I will personally help you find a great church that you can get plugged into, because listen, I believe in this principle so much that I want the best for you. And if this isn't the place, I understand our churches, every church isn't for everybody. So we want to help you find the perfect church for you. And whatever that means, whatever you like, whatever you're thinking about, I will personally help you find it, because I love you that much. And I believe in God's word that much that you will flourish if you are planted in the house of the Lord. Man, I don't go to church. I'm planted in the house of God. How you doing, man? I'm flourishing. I'm flourishing. Life's not perfect, but man, I'm blessed. Things are going well. It's amazing to see that I've got this foundation of people around me, supporting me, praying for me, believing in me at every turn. I'm flourishing, and I can see a difference. I don't just go to church. I am the church. And I understand that I am the church, and we exist for the world to make a difference in people's lives. We're at City Light. That's something I won't be known for. We are contributors, not consumers. If we could stand up today, we're going to close this message.